Today I'm going to be pruning a Limelight Hydrangea tree. I'm Laura from Garden Sanity, here in my Zone 7 Southern New Jersey garden. Today I'll discuss when to prune your Limelight Hydrangea trees, and I'm going to show you how to prune this one. I'm also going to discuss new wood versus old stems, and tell you 5 things to think about when you're pruning one of these trees. Let's get started. So the best time to prune your Limelight Hydrangea tree is usually in the late winter or early spring. This year, in particular here in southern New Jersey, we had a very long winter, longer than normal, I should say. So whereas in the past several years, I would prune the Limelight tree in, say, early mid-March, here we are, it's towards the end of March, and I'm just getting around to pruning it, partly because of the way the weather's been. It's been a little on the cold side, and I just wanted to wait a little bit longer, partly so I could show you some buds, things like that coming out. Some people say that you can prune them in the fall. I won't dispute the point, but what's nice about the Limelight Hydrangea tree is you can leave the dried flowers on the tree for the winter interest. This year that didn't really happen for me, and I'll explain why in a minute. But normally that's what I do, is I leave them all on. In fact, I did leave remaining ones on. I think there's one little one hanging there somewhere. And then also, by not pruning it until the springtime, you can see what twigs and stems survived the winter. It's a little bit easier to see, especially when you've got little buds coming out. And a helpful tip is that if you're new at this, and this is what I still do every year, and I've been trimming this tree now for several years, maybe 6-7 years, I wait until the buds start to show up on the tree. I'll show you an example of it so you can see. I'll show you several examples, and by doing that you know exactly where to make your cuts, and it makes it a lot easier than guessing where you should prune. Limelight hydrangea trees, as well as all paniculata type hydrangeas, bloom on new growth, which means the current season stems. But those new stems sprout forth from the old wood stems of the plant. It makes sense, right? This means that no matter if you prune your tree severely or mildly, your tree will produce gorgeous blooms because all the flowers come from new stems which grow out from the sides of the old stems. This should put any worry you may have about pruning your tree to rest. You can't screw this up. I promise you. Last summer, this tree was severely damaged during Tropical Storm Isaias, which I'll talk about in a little bit. I had to do an emergency pruning, and so that's why this tree looks like it does right now. This tree went from this to this, and after I pruned it, it looked like this. Last summer, before the storm, it was top-heavy and lopsided, and this year I hope to keep a better eye on the stems in the back and somehow get them growing to make the tree full and not lopsided anymore. I'll show you what I mean as we go along. Always make your pruning cuts above newly forming buds, leaves, or stems. How far down the branch you wish to prune is up to you. Just always remember to prune just above a set of leaf nodes or buds, and I'll show you what I mean. These buds that you see here will become new leaves and stems during the upcoming season. This cut is above the 2 buds, which is how you want to make any cuts where you are pruning back the stems and not simply removing the entire stem. The new leaf buds, which will eventually become new stems, will continue to grow, and eventually they'll cover up the pruned stem that you cut back. So here are 5 things to do when you're pruning your Limelight Hydrangea tree. If you remember these 5 things, you'll be in great shape, and so will your tree. First, cut off any remaining dried flower heads. Second, remove any dead branches or stems. Third, remove any crossing branches. Fourth, remove any small weak stems. And fifth, remove any overly long branches to give the tree better shape. Let's go through each one in detail. First, cut off the remaining dried flower heads. As basic as this sounds, do this first before you begin to prune any stems. This way you can see exactly what the tree looks like without any dried flowers getting in the way. Obviously, I don't have that problem this year. Second, remove any dead branches or stems. To begin with, if any branches look dead to me, I take my hand pruners and just cut a little bit off the stem. What does the inside look like? Is there any green visible? No matter what, you may still miss a few branches that are dead, and that's okay. Later on, once the tree is leafing out, look for signs of any dead stems you may have missed earlier and just go ahead and remove those branches with your pruners or loppers. Third, remove any crossing branches. Locating any crossing branches is easy to do in early spring before the tree leaves out. When branches are crossed, they rub against each other, causing the bark to weaken over time, which lets in fungus and disease. Surprise, surprise, I do have an example of crossing branches, so I'm glad I can show you this. So here I've got an old branch, this guy right here, and a newer branch right behind it. And you can tell that I made previous cuts. You can see that here and here. So this new branch was once a bud, grew up, but it's touching and rubbing against these stems. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to choose the newer stem over the older stem for the basic reason that it's newer, it's healthier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a cut right down here, right here, cut this old stem off and keep the new one. The fourth thing to be aware of is to remove any small or weak stems. Weak stems won't ever turn into strong stems, so it's best to just remove them. In fact, many tiny or small stems won't survive the winter season anyway. All of the weak stems are going to look like tiny twigs, so they're pretty easy to spot and remove. And the fifth and final thing to do is to prune back any overly long stems just to give the tree a better shape. Another reason that I like to trim back overly long stems, especially now, is because I've seen what happens when a tree gets lopsided. If you see the back of this tree, it really needs to almost start over. So what I'm going to be doing is taking some of the middle branches, the tallest branches of this tree, and I'm actually going to cut those down so that more sun reaches the back of this tree, and hopefully that helps get it more fuller, both front and back, less lopsided. So here's the tree all done. And as you can see, all the spindly branches are gone. I removed crossing branches, anything that looked really dead to me. And I took everything up to a pretty decent level. Let's see, I'm 5 feet, and this is a little bit higher than me. This is probably about 6 feet, maybe, the tallest branches are. And you'll notice I did leave some of the lower branches, like this guy. This guy will put out some nice lower leafing things. Lower leafing things means that I'm tired. What's nice is all these branches that I touch now, like this one, they're all just very strong, very sturdy, nothing spindly. I even left this guy in here because he's very strong and he'll send up hopefully some shoots. We'll see how it goes. Now the back of this tree, which is what I'm showing you now, this is what was so lopsided last year. So I'm hoping that now, with a little bit of better pruning like I did, I've got a couple stems that are jutting out towards the back that'll really help this tree to get going. I think the most important thing is I'm going to keep such an eye on it, it's not even funny. I never want what happened to me last summer to happen again. Do you need to be concerned with how heavy the Limelight Hydrangea Tree flowers get? Yes, you do. And here's where you can learn from my mistake. A Limelight Hydrangea Tree becomes top heavy when it has many flower heads growing to a huge size. In fact, a fully grown hydrangea tree can have panicles, which are the flower heads, that can be more than 10 inches in length and fairly wide at the base of each flower head too. And after a rainstorm, these blooms hold onto the water and become very heavy and droop. And if you have one of these trees, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Well, after a tropical storm, the tree can break apart from the weight of those long stems and heavy blooms as they're being blown about in the high winds. In fact, I made a video about this last fall, so I'd encourage you to watch the video. Not only will it show you the awful ugly pictures of what happened to our beautiful tree, but I'll show you what I did with the emergency pruning so you can see actually how the tree ended up looking like it does now. So, I'll leave you with this. If there's one lesson to be learned in this video, don't be afraid to prune, thinking you won't have beautiful large flowers. trust me, you will have a Limelight Hydrangea tree full of gorgeous blooms if you just follow these simple steps. You want to look for the buds, make your cuts right above a set of buds. Those are going to turn into the new leaves and stems, and remember, flowers grow on those new leaves and stems. So there's no worries. Wherever you cut, you're going to have 2 or 3 stems grow from that, and then you're going to have gorgeous flowers. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and in the meantime, I'll see you soon with the next pruning project.